Economic growth must benefit a wide segment of society, or it will lose the political consensus to support it. That point was made by Prime Minister Hsien Loong to other leaders at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Sri Lanka today.
This year's meeting centres on the theme of inclusive development. Speaking to leaders, Prime Minister Hsien Loong said for equitable growth to take place, it's crucial for countries to maintain a healthy and growing economy. But he stressed that prosperity must result in better lives, jobs, living conditions and opportunities for all. He noted how globalisation has led to growing anxiety among the low-income and middle-income groups. Mr. Lee said governments cannot reverse these trends, but it must mitigate downsides and shield people from uncertainties and inequalities. The challenge, said Mr. Lee, is to do it well. Now, in some ways, the 53 members of the Commonwealth reflect the income disparity governments are facing within their own countries. Now, Commonwealth members are made up of some of the world's richest and poorest nations, spanning across Africa, Asia and the Pacific. And one way to address income disparity is through state welfare, which some observers have said doesn't necessarily work. Mr. Lee said with state welfare, it's hard to translate noble intentions and social spending into real gains. Heavy public spending, he said, has often not solved problems of unemployment and lack of competitiveness. Instead, it results in fiscal deficits and growing debt. One way out of this, said Mr. Lee, is to pursue sustainable development. That is, governments living within its means and pursuing development strategies that sustain growth over the long term. Melissa, Channel News Asia, Colombo, Sri Lanka.
And PM Lee has just met Singapore media as he wraps up his visit to Sri Lanka. Imelda was at the session and joins us live on the line. Imelda, I understand Mr. Lee addressed the issue of poverty. What did he have to say?
Well, yes, Grace, Mr. Lee addressed recent calls by some quarters for Singapore to have an official poverty line. Now, if you remember, there was also a report issued recently by the Singapore Management University and the Hsien Foundation for the country to have a broad definition of poverty beyond just monetary terms. Now, Mr. Lee said that would not be helpful because for Singapore, there is a wide definition of what it means to be poor. Now, having basic needs like food and shelter is not the problem, but people who, for example, have low wages, who have dependents, who face family issues. So if one were to take in all those broad definitions into account and then set a poverty scale, which would be so high for the country and put all the resources there, that, Mr. Lee said, is not helpful. What's important, he said, is to see what the needs are and to address them and to channel more resources to those who need more help.
Imelda, this Commonwealth meeting has been somewhat overshadowed by calls for an investigation into alleged war crimes by the Sri Lankan government. Did Mr. Lee have a view on that?
Well, yes, Mr. Lee reiterated Singapore's stand that its countries cannot impose reconciliation from outside, and he also said that countries don't have any business to interfere in Sri Lanka's internal affairs. Singapore's position is really to engage Sri Lanka and to help the country in its reconciliation and reconstruction efforts.
Thanks very much indeed for that live update in Melbourne.